Welcome. I said good afternoon. It's good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunshine in Pineland. It's about 11:30 a.m. here, United States East Coast, coming to you from the heart of Pineland in the great state of Maine. I am your host, Tom Kaczynski. Alongside me, I have Dana, who will or will not comment, as is her wont. We'll see if there's. You want to say hi?
Hi.
So she's saying hi. Not expecting a lot of comments from her, but you never know. Could go the other way. Also, if you hear interrupted chirping, Rue, our little buff Orpington, is with us, and we have our amazing survivor chicken, which we still have we decided on a name? Mirabelle. Okay.
Mirabelle.
Okay, I can't sound Spanish very effectively, minus the teeth I'm missing. So we'll just call it Mirabelle and know that it sounds like a D when she says it. So what we are going to talk about today on today's episode of Sunshine in Pineland. First, just a couple quick news hits. Taiwan, China thing, because I am watching that very closely. I am concerned about it. China lobbed some missiles into the Japanese economic zone after shooting them over Taiwan. They're now up to having 7 groups surrounding there, and there's a thought that we're hearing more and more that there may be some sort of a blockade happening. Right now, the public announcements of the Chinese ministry, and good morning, EM, good morning, Crumb, is that we are going to see these live fire exercises continue until the 7th or potentially the 8th, and I'm not sure what will follow that, but certainly Pelosi has left there, and we see a high state of mobilization throughout East Asia ongoing, as well as I should report this. The United States Senate voted yesterday 95-1 to approve the proposal for Sweden and Finland to join NATO. For those of you who don't understand the process there, every state in NATO will need to approve them. It is going through very quickly for the most part, except for Turkey, which wants to have Finland and Sweden basically extradite whoever they want to pick from a lineup in order to support them. The Turks, as usual, are playing the Turkish game. And whether you consider them part of Western civilization or not, it's sort of an interesting question, but we've ranted about that plenty of times on this program. Not really looking to get into that today. Played one too many games of EU where I am just never going to be a big fan of the Ottoman Empire. Let's just put it that way, and whatever things emerge from it. But I understand why Kemal Ataturk got so annoyed, and it's going back the way it used to be over there. But that's not what I want to talk about today either. That's fine. Another big piece of news was that I believe the Bank of England raised their interest rate, I want to say 75 bips, which was one of the highest increases that we have seen in many, many decades, and the pound is having a very, very bad day today here in response to that, given the high expenses involved with doing business there in the UK. But this is something we see in many places where inflation is being attacked by the banking system with the goal of taking money out of the money supply. And the idea that more valuable money will stop that development, but what it's actually doing is making goods more expensive in the sense that while the money supply is being reduced, we also have a supply shock shortage, which is coming from the energy sector being driven by the Russians in response to the sanctions by the West, as well as the other as well as the other issues about lack of production coming out of the Chinese and the various logistical issues. Good to see you, Tim. Yeah, no, we've had an interesting conversation over on the Atlantic Homeland side, t.me/Atlantic Homeland. If you want to have a brilliant conversation, what have we been talking about? Let's see. They've been talking about the Gang of Four music group. We've been talking about why Hegel is to blame for Marx. And who would be the one person you would remove from history post-1648 to make the world a better place? I actually would be interested to hear some of your other answers. So if you want to join us over there, join in the chat, defend your position. We've had some really interesting arguments, and we had Mao Zedong suggested. We'll see who else is. Did I get which information? Yeah, I got to put it in after the fact, though. But yes, I did get it. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, we'll be putting more updates, more detailed information, and better tags for your viewing pleasure. For those of you who are here live, this won't matter to you. But after the fact, we'll get able to cover these things. So, before I get into the content of today's program, I want to thank everyone who supports the show. Your support is what allows us to continue. And it means a lot now, because I actually have some decisions I have to make here in the coming days if I'm going to focus more effort on the podcasting side, on the material content generation side, or if I'm going to do other things. And then then have to balance this out differently. So I like doing this full time, but hey, if you want it, make it happen, support the program. Venmo, CVC, PRV, PO Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. Check out the books over on Amazon and Audible. Good news, Behold the Beast system is now more than halfway done. I just spent 4 chapters talking about the credit score system, the reasons why it's going to come into place, and this is really a good transition to what I want to talk about the program today. I feel like we suffer collectively in our country, in our civilization, even in this community, even in Pinelanders, because there's a lot of pragmatists here, with a lack of imagination, and I don't want to include everyone in that. We have some very imaginative people, but we all have this tendency toward normalcy bias, myself included, of course, where we struggle to see the things which could happen because we don't know what is possible. We believe certain things that are possible, which
you
actually...
need more INFJs in your group. You have too many INTJs. I'm just saying.
Spoken from the wife. So what we actually are noticing is, or what I've noticed and what I want to complain about today, and there's a reason why. It's at the heart of this conflict. Give me a minute to get to it. I'll make sense by the end. Either that or you won't get it, one or the other. There's a lot of things we have been trained to think of as impossible that are quite regularly possible. And the reason why the previous week before my strike ban, we talked about so many things in high tech and the integration of biology and technology is because I wanted you to see what could be done if you just connected those bricks together in a little erector set. But we also tend to think that certain things that are, that are possible, or we think of, it goes both ways, right? We have things that we think of that are impossible that are possible, and then we have things we think of that are possible that are really impossible. And the idea that, like, for instance, multiculturalism working as a happy outcome, failing to recognize the human nature example, we get ourselves into situations where, with the best of intentions, at least by most of the people, there's some people at the top who know better, they're tricking people, but that's fine. We are manipulated into situations and certain outcomes. And what you start to realize the longer you spend time working on these issues is you realize that the fight over society is not over politics, and it's not over ideology, and it's not over materials, although it certainly helps to have some. If you had, for instance, if I had Elon Musk's bank account, the world would be a different place. At least for a little while. It would be more interesting. Ultimately it's going to work out. Why would that be terrifying? That would be absolutely awesome.
No, it would be like real life Pinky in the Brain, and I can't. I don't got the energy for that kind of crap.
You see this? This is the head of my fan club. It's like that Selena movie.
What? No. Shit.
Okay, so my source of humility, in the old Roman days when they had a chariot tribute was awarded to a victor of a great battle or a great war, they'd come back, and then there'd always be someone reminding him, saying that glory is fleeting. Well, there you go. Spoken like a true German. Anyway, she'd know. But what I wanted to say to you is that the key to understanding this is not ideology, it's not ethnology, it's not even culture, it's leverage. And I'm going to explain why. I was writing in my book today. We were working on Chapter 8 of Behold the Beast system, and I was talking about society and why people would succumb to a social credit score system. And people are like, oh, they'll never go for that. Too many people have vested assets, vested interests, vested status. And you're right. People don't want to give up. And the reason why nothing changes is everyone's more afraid of something being worse than something getting better, right? That we think, I'll take the devil I know versus the devil I don't. But here's the problem. The devil you know is ultimately just as illusory as the devil you don't. Like, you think that every day you wake up, your bank account is there and you're going to be able to access it, or you're going to be able to buy and sell. You'll be able to use your credit card or your debit card or even your cash, whatever the case is, that you'll be able to use these things. And that stores will be open and goods will be purchased and the world will work as it's always worked because too many people are invested in it for change. But here's the problem. History pivots on the will and zeal of those who use knowledge as leverage, and they understand human psychology in doing this to change the way the system works. So what is the root of the Great Reset, right, that they talk about all the time? The Great Reset is really the Great Collapse and the rebuilding. It's a forced implosion, It's 9/11 on steroids, if you really want to know that, except instead of blowing up 2 buildings, they're blowing up 2 civilizations, the East and the West, by setting them against one another, by having supply shortages where you get stuck at the end of isn't a binary choice. You might want a free society. You might want liberty. You might want to keep your assets. You want to keep your stuff. But at the end of the day, unless you have self-sufficiency and the ability to survive, not just on your own, but collectively, because if you're the one prepper in your community and there's 9 people around you who are clueless and the government says, okay, we're going to give you $1,000 check. This is the only money you can use to purchase things. This is the only food that's available out there. And we will punish you if you get food from somewhere else. We will reward you if you report someone who has that. What do you think is going to happen in that world? And how long of a breakdown do you think is required to get from where we are today to where that world is tomorrow? And I know people say, oh, that could never happen. Well, why not? What's your dollar worth? You guys have studied the Fed. You've read G. Edward Griffin. Most of you supported Ron Paul back in the day. I worked for the man. What's your money worth? It ain't worth anything. The electronic system, okay? We thought crypto was the great escape because you know what? It's just as much BS. But if they are willing, you know who has the great quote on this? I even put this in the book. Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, okay? The David Lynch version because I haven't watched the new one yet.
Yes.
A person who can destroy a thing controls a thing. They controlled the spice. They brought the whole universe down because everyone depended on it. Do you depend on technology? Do you depend on just-in-time logistics? Do you depend on electricity being provided when you hit that switch and you don't know how it's made? Or you might know how it's made, but you're not the one producing it with something that you can directly manage. Do you count on that for your heat, for your food, for your water, for your sanitation? If the answer to those questions is yes.
AI is the mind killer.
Well,
I will allow it to pass through me.
Well, that's why they had the Mentats. That's why they had a good old Thufir Hawat. Because actually the Butlerian Jihad and the predecessor history of what happened in the Dune universe was there was a singularity mind computer, and people realized it was the computer or them, and they went to war to destroy all computers. And after that, they're like, no more computers. Have you noticed how they don't have computers? They have screens, but they don't have advanced computer technology in the Dune universe because they realized it was a threat. And if you don't believe that, look at what Elon Musk's computers say about the rest of us. And people say, oh, that's so far away. They're not going to do that. No, it's not. Things come at you quick, and just because you were waiting for things to be released to the domestic population doesn't mean that's what's out there.
That freaks me out listening to...
It should.
To AI
Accelerated
stuff,
disorientation.
Talking about, it would only make sense for us to, do away with humans for self-preservation. It's
Their
so
way
creepy.
of talking was so dismissive. They're like, look, we don't want to control human violence. They look at it like we look at our chickens pecking at each other in the yard. We just want to be clear of it, and if you keep causing too much problem to pollution or climate, we're going to get rid of you. Like we are some pets on a plantation. And that is what happens when you don't have control over the abilities and necessities you have for your own life. But this is what leverage is all about. It's not about money. It's not about your ability to buy things. It's not even about imagination unless you don't get to have imagination unless you can meet the necessitated needs of your material existence. And people don't. They don't want to. They're not able to societally. We're not trained to. We go through our lives. We become specialists in things. And myself too. Look, I read books. Do you think books are good? They're kindling for a fire at best, okay? They'll light the fire of your imagination. Go buy them. But the thing about it is, ultimately, that's not what's going to save you, in this world. In this world. Now, beyond this world, we can talk about faith, theology, bigger ideas. They're important, they're relevant. But we're just going to keep it this level because a lot of people don't even know how to think about God. And then, sadly, this is who we have to consider, And this is why I do sermons on Sundays to try to awaken a few people, hoping that, we can change how we think about ourselves to change how we relate to the world. That we would begin being subjects in it instead of objects. But in a secular worldview, in a materialist empirical universe, we are objects to be manipulated, and any subjectivity we have is sort of arbitrary, indifferent, and irrelevant because there is no purpose. It's randomness or it's just pattern recognition. And in that world, what happens is you recognize patterns of how leverage and control works, and this is how money works. This is why, since everyone uses it and everyone's invested in it, certain people get to make it for free, and the rest of us are out here slumming away trying to make a living. So in the same sort of way, those people can say, well, it's not worth anything now. And it would not take a lot to see it happen. And this is the point. People just refuse to understand this. And and including a lot of people in the preparedness community. Like I see a lot of people say, worry, take care of your debts, take care of solving your financial things, get at them. And look, it's a good idea not to be in debt to people because it ruins relationships, okay? The old saw, neither a debtor nor a borrower be, is a smart one if you can help it. Nonetheless,
oh, yeah. The Bible has a lot of advice on
the book of Proverbs.
Yeah.
Well,
Getting
because you're going to
yourself-
hate someone. I mean, if you
getting
give
yourself
money
into
to someone,
situations,
if you give
yeah.
money to help someone, honestly, you know, for instance, I'll give you an example. And I'll be bluntly honest with you. I've had so many people say over the years, Tom, why don't you go on there and say, okay, everyone who wants to listen to Pinelanders or whatever program I'm running, because you know it changes with the times a little bit. It has to. I'm a dynamic guy. I should be charging $10 a month for everyone who wants to be involved, and that's just how it is. But I don't do that because, frankly, you wouldn't want to give. You don't. There's a difference psychologically in the mindset of someone who says you have to pay for a service versus what will you give for this. And I will say this community is very generous. It's why I ask you for help. I don't know what you have. I mean, some of you I do, but I mean, basically, I don't know what you have. So help if you can and help how you can. And you know, that's why, you know, sometimes people give $5, and I'm just as grateful, believe it or not, as the person who gives $5 as $500 because I realize for someone that's a lot of money. There are people we support, we give $5, $10 to. But why do I share all this? Because you don't know what leverage actually is to a person, what has meaning to a person. These are just numbers on a chart, and yeah, they have a certain purchasing power today. But as we've already witnessed in this last year, our purchasing power has probably already been halved. Those of you who've studied history, God knows everyone here studied World War II. How long did it take for Weimar Germany to go from wealthy to wheelbarrow in terms of where their money went? And once that happened, people supported a new totalitarian system. They're like, give us an answer. We demand an answer. Sri Lanka 2 weeks ago. We're watching them. They took down the president. They took down the palace. Now they're getting rationed fuel and food cards, and they're grateful for it. Thank you. At least we're not starving. You took care of us. Meanwhile, it's the same idiots who put them into that situation, who put in those terrible climate rules that were there that ruined their economy, that are controlling and leveraging finance, who are putting these people into desperation, poverty, and giving them a solution. And they take it because it's a lifeline. It's like someone abducts you, takes you in a boat in the middle of the sea, drops you out there, throws you in the ocean, throws you a dinghy, lets you sit on it, worried of death, and you're grateful, at least I'm not dead. Expectations, leverage, imagination. This is what we're dealing with. And I know people say, oh, well, they wouldn't do that. Why wouldn't they do it? They're doing it. Why do you think they're I mean, look, they're not growing things. They want to feed us crickets.
Oh, I saw something about them like already being in like fast food burgers and stuff.
The Rhine River
Which
now.
I'm gonna make you watch, by the way.
No, I don't want to watch it.
You're gonna watch it.
I'm not watching it. The Rhine River is out of water now, so now German industry's starting to shut down.
So's the Euphrates.
They don't have the Euphrates River's been drained. Yeah, it looks
I'm
like there's
more afraid of
prison.
that one though, because of the angels coming out from underneath it.
Lake Mead. How far are we now from the Hoover Dam shutting down? And what's been the response? Oh, we're going to continue shutting down nuclear power plants. You know, the Germans, you know, I was reading an article, Zero Hedge today, actually. Germans, you know what the Germans' response to a lack of power plants is and to rising heating costs is they're buying electric heaters, okay? Now, let me tell you something. If you don't have the coal and you shut down your nuclear and the Russians don't send you the gas and you have electric heaters, when you plug those electric heaters into the outlet, I'm going to tell you a little secret. The electricity still has to be produced somewhere. The electric heater does not produce the electricity. Okay? You're Germans. If Germans can't engineer, this world is done. My lord. Next thing you know, Jews will be running real charities. I swear to God. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Real life stories. I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
Yes, you are.
I can make that joke. I can make that joke. It's a kind joke. Anyway. Oh, Lord. The point is that we have reached the point in a society where we presume normalcy will continue. Because it always has. But we can see it's not. And everyone's like, oh, when's it going to collapse? This isn't going to happen. And everyone's pretending it's not going to happen, but we're all just waiting. It's like we're waiting for the fireworks at the end of the show. We can see the bits and pieces. People aren't working like they used to. Goods aren't moving like they used to. Energy, transportation, production is a huge problem. And we see the infrastructure being put in place. Have you noticed automated tellers everywhere you go? Automated cashiers, you know? That everything is being traced and tracked. Have you noticed there's cameras in a lot more places? A lot of facial recognition technology. We'll know that the gig is up when they actually allow voting ID. Of course, by then it won't matter. Not that it matters now. I mean, Lord knows. You know, you see an example. Did you see what was it? The governor election in Arizona? Carrie Lake won, but she was the kind of more radical Republican in the race. We'll put it that way. And her opponent, you know, all of a sudden a bazillion write-in ballots came in. You know, same usual scam, and they're like, oh, well, we can't question this. And Doug Ducey, governor of Arizona and whatnot, they don't seem to want to do anything. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't steal the Arizona governorship. Not even that it matters, except in the veneer of legitimacy. And this is the thing. We always say, oh, well, you know, the law applies. Did you guys see the report that Project Veritas did? Okay, so let's talk. Domestic terrorists. So let me tell you what are domestic terrorism symbols. The Gadsden flag, that's the one with the Don't Tread on Me flag. What? Mentioning the Second Amendment, this was FBI internal documents. So just so you know, you guys are all on the list with me. Welcome to the club. The Betsy Ross flag. So, you know what, I think Bunker Hill just got occupied by the archivists. You might want to go check on them, FBI. And you know what, and I've talked to FBI agents on this. I've actually had this exact conversation 3 years ago. Because they take an interest in me, because I'm an interesting guy. I don't blame them for that. Anyway. So what I was saying to them, and what I'm saying to you, and what I say to everyone's the same, it's the only way you can be safe, you have to be consistent about it, is that you can't keep branding everything that people believe as terrorism and have it be a situation where you expect to support the government. You know, we now might be on the verge of a real war. A war with China, a war with Russia, and look, I don't want to fight for this government. I won't fight for this government. I will literally help build an army to fight not for this government if that's what's needed. But here's the thing. China is really awful, and Russia's bad for being in bed with them. And, you know, I was watching the Chinese say, they're like, we are sick of Western imperialism and their terrible ideas. Oh, really? Where the hell do you think you guys picked up communism? It wasn't at the super buffet. How about you dump that idea?
Panda Express, that's where you go for a healthy dose of communism.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't know how they expect communism to work in Asia anyway. I never met more materialistic people in my life. But I guess capitalism, communism are two sides.
You come to Panda Express, you get free pair of chopsticks. Yeah. You can pick through the Communist Manifesto.
Exactly. But anyway, my point to you, I'm a little rambly today. I'm in kind of a hot mood. I'm kind of in a bad mood. I'll be honest, I'm in a bad mood. I am in a bad mood. Well, yeah, I'm in a bad mood because you know what the thing is? The smart people who can see things coming, I include most of you in that. I'm going to assume you're part of that. If not, pretend until you get there, right? You can see this thing is not going to hold together. And what are we doing about it? We're just waiting and watching because we can't figure out how to organize ourselves because we have a lack of imagination, because we accept the leverage of the system. And this is what it's all going to come down to, honest to God. There's going to be a small interval. Could be as short as a few days, probably won't be longer than a couple months, where things will get really bad. Not sure if they'll use a pandemic, a war, a famine, or some combination therein. The Bible talks about this. There's 4 doors to choose from, and they may all open up at the same time. We'll see how it goes. But there will be a presented solution that will say, hey, we will take care of you. And if you look at the longer trend of history, which we do on this program, because we're worried about the thought of ideas, that what we expect to see is adult juvenilism, adult infantilism continue. This idea that people don't know for themselves what they want, and they want someone to take care of them. I mean, we don't know how to do it. We're discouraged to do it. We're penalized for doing it. Like there was some Amish. What was it, in Pennsylvania? Amish have a little bit of sway in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of them out there, and they're punishing them for selling milk and meat.
A lot of I can't talk. A lot of Amish farms are getting raided now.
Their crime is self-sufficiency, and I talk about this in the book too. I'll share what my thought was today. Why the Chinese prosecute jaywalking? It's not because they're worried about the Chinese getting hit, because they wouldn't do that, because that's not sane. It's because they want people in the habit of right think. The surveillance state that exists for one reason: to control your thought patterns, to turn a man into a machine, to turn someone who's autonomous into an automaton, to make it where you will do the expected behavior. And mind you, it's going to have terrible results. We talked about the Chinese demography and their birth rate, but they don't care because they want people gone. And who are they? Who are they? They are the people at the top who think that they're not going to be part of the same system. I talk about this, the technocrats, the dreamers of us being part machine where we can live in fantasy worlds and just wait out for the heat death of the universe. And the occultists who are behind them, who have been listening to the little voices in their head that say, go ahead, give away your abilities, give away your DNA and see what happens. We don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know either.
Like, honestly, if I had known back in, 2015, that it was going to play out this way with like biometrics and DNA, I would never, ever, ever had agreed to that stupid ancestry DNA test.
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was fun, and we thought it was interesting.
Exactly 0% Asian.
Well, that's right. You're making up for that with attitude, so that's all right. But yeah, no, if I could go back 10 years, I tell you what I would do. I would have invested in crypto, pulled out at exactly the right time, and I'd be living like a king in Patagonia with the dread pirate Gary.
Oh no, dude! Did you just see down in Chile?
Don't tell me.
Somewhere down there, they're reporting on this sinkhole that's opening up, and they're saying it's never going to stop collapsing. So apparently, this is the never-ending sinkhole.
So you're telling me literally the world is collapsing in on itself?
Yes.
Well, that's what happens when you're in a vacuum. Dana was showing me these videos of what happens when a steel, a steel car from a train was exposed to vacuum, and how it basically crunched like an aluminum
crunched
can.
It like you would see at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. And people in space, we just float around happily. It's just low orbit, or you really do wonder. I really do wonder. You know what? I study this so much. I'm going to get myself in trouble, man, but I'm starting to doubt some of the moon stuff. I mean, with the Kubrick stuff, I've studied that a lot. And so much of this is...
I never thought that I'd get there, but I'm like,
one of the things I might do, we'll see. We'll see how much trouble I want to get into trouble with at this program, but I am tempted to do another look at Antarctica. There wasn't a trans-Antarctic expedition until 1958. This was interesting, and the guy who ended up leading it was Sir Edmund Hillary. I didn't know that, the guy who climbed Mount Everest. And what they did was they started theoretically from Scott Station and McMurdo Station, and they had a New Zealand team and a British team, and they met in the middle and kept going the other way. And that's sort of interesting, though, that no one would have bothered to do that beforehand, considering they put these treaties in place, considering the stories about New Schwabenland, considering Operation Fishbowl, considering where supposedly they shot missiles up and they bounced back down on them. That's interesting. Operation Paperclip, where the whole U.S. Navy went down there trying to attack something and got sent back with more damages than they suffered at the Battle of Midway. And no one knows these stories.
Didn't that happen after John Kerry went down there?
Well, he went down there afterwards.
John Kerry was supposedly, he went down there, and afterwards there was like a huge earthquake.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. He went right before the election. Well, I don't know. The
Nephilim didn't agree with John Kerry's plan for America.
I am convinced that whatever the story is, there's a lot to be found out in Antarctica. And I might spend some more time going back if I get some time to do something fun and we don't end up with World War III, that I might go back and look more deeply at the life of Robert Byrd. If you guys haven't read it, it's worth a look. I mean, supposedly... a hero from World War I goes up to North Pole, gets taken underground to some hollow earth place called Agartha, where he's told that, we're being watched and that certain things will happen. Then he goes to Antarctica, gets stuck down there in a cabin over winter, goes virtually insane, comes back, starts talking about things that aren't supposed to exist in an interview in Chile, which gets anesthetized by the time he comes back to America, and then he dies. So, I don't know. We will have to definitely see. I'm just saying, it's a really interesting story that doesn't fit the narrative at all, and I'm just finding, I find a lot of weird things about that story, and I'm very curious about it, what is happening in Antarctica. But so while we look for signs of life down there, we have to continue looking for ones of those up here, and what I want to go... let's see, Ryan asks, untouched ruins from pre-Ice Age civilization, perhaps even survivors in underground cities? Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts that, there's the pole shift theory that says Antarctica was once at the center of the map and then it got iced over. That's possible. The flat earthers believe that it's a giant ice cap around which the dome sits and that therefore that people are just walking around the circumference of it. That's a possibility. What else do we got over there? There's one that says that the Nephilim were buried under the flood under that's when the original ice popped up, and that there's been a labyrinth they've been digging under to try to find them. And look, I'm not substantiating any of these theories. I'm just laying them out there. I've read some of them. I find them interesting. I won't pretend to have the knowledge to comment intelligently on any of them, other than to say that it's really weird for the governments of the world to have an area of resources they could exploit but are not, or at least that we cannot have access to. And I would love to go take a look what's going on around there. Look, I'm used to the snow. I have a beard. I can handle this. Dana's looking to get me shoes with better traction, so we're going to be all right. We can do this. I had this plan,
Oh
what was it,
no.
like 5 years ago, about
Oh.
how you would build into the ice to build a structure to live in Antarctica. And actually, as it turns out, I wasn't crazy, but it would have
They
had to be better.
actually did the same
They
thing.
did it. She said I was nuts. I wasn't
I
nuts. I
didn't
was
say
ahead
you
of the
were
game.
nuts.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Didn't you think I was crazy?
Well, I didn't want to go to Antarctica.
But you still thought it was crazy.
I mean,
Well, in any case, Thule Air Base in Greenland was actually built in there, and what happened was they sunk a nuclear reactor into the ice, and it kept on sinking. It became such a problem they had to pull it out because they were risking, well, a cataclysm by doing it. But this is really interesting, and what's interesting, what's interesting about Antarctica specifically, since you mentioned it, Ryan, is in the 19th century, the islands, what they call it, the Sandwich Islands, the different islands up there, that was the primary whale hunting area. Actually, I mean, now we look askance at whale hunting, except if you're Japanese, but and some Norwegians. But whale hunting was the primary way in which they produced a lot of heating oil before petroleum byproducts were used. So they would use whale blubber as common oil in the up to about the Victorian age. So they did that, and they hunted the crap out of them, including in the Atlantic as well, and then the Pacific, so Alaska and whatnot. And then they decided they're not going to do that anymore, which is fine. I mean, I'm not the world's biggest conservationist, but whales seem like pretty nice creatures, so don't want to hurt whales. Yeah, we can save the sea turtles. What animals do we not want to save? That's more interesting. You should make a list. Whoever's at the bottom. It'd be like American Idol. You get on there and be like, what animals are we going to save? And who gets voted out the
any
list?
insect that sucks blood. Can we just
See, nobody likes insects.
Can we do like
I mean,
we need
mosquitoes.
certain insects, but insects that suck blood, honestly,
Bees,
like
bee puns.
aside from just like providing, pestilence. I mean,
I'm not a big bug plant.
what are they good for?
I mean, I guess they have some utility to flowers and whatnot. But anyway, so we've won.
Mosquitoes don't live on pollen. They bite things.
No, but yeah, mosquitoes live on blood. I'm aware.
Yeah,
Blood meal.
Anything that lives off of blood sucks blood. They don't need to
Well,
be
I mean,
here.
it's interesting. One of the things this Sunday we're going to talk about locusts quite a bit, because we're going to be covering parts of Moses' biblical plague as well as the what the army in Joel 2 is. So maybe this is God's way of serving as an inducement. Sometimes a parent uses a paddle in the day to get their kids to listen. God uses a plague or a horde of locusts or something, or one of those things. Sometimes they're terrifying, by the way. But anyway, we were talking about leverage, so let's go back to leverage. What I want us to start thinking about is and you need to think of this individually. You need to get your mind into the INTJ mindset, of this. You need to start looking at the things that are likely coming ahead that they're telling you, because you look at Agenda 2030, these people are not deceitful in the sense that they tell you what they're going to do. They want a zero consumption economy. They want a zero carbon economy. You know how that works when you turn life into machines. You just have to have a little bit of imagination. Understand there are insane people. And, people think, oh, well, everyone's normal. Normal people don't run the world. Normal people go to work every day, take care of their kids, come home, and are the background noise. They are the trees in the play where the woman is screaming about, help, rescue me, and the crazy knights come fight one another. It's the mad people who run the asylum. It always has been. And if you understand that, the dreamers who are unwilling to accept no for an answer, who are willing to pay prices, including ones they shouldn't, are the ones that are going to shape reality, And if you look at our reality as it is, okay? We're in this habit, this mindset of thinking, well, we all have reason. To some extent, that's true. And we all have value. The Lord says as much. I agree with that. But look at this. We have a situation where 300 people have half the wealth of the world, okay? Ever try to explain that someone votes? Voting is a joke. I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter. What difference does it make? You vote for a Republican, you get a pause on what it's a VCR that doesn't have a rewind button. You get play, fast forward, and pause. You don't get rewind. And you have to go to the end of the stupid movie to watch however horrible it is. And we say, well, it's fair because everyone gets a say. Why should everyone get a say? I don't think everyone should get a say. And we should listen to people. And if what they have to say isn't useful, we stop listening to people. We don't say, hey, well, your opinion's different. And what we have to do, but this is the organizational aspect of it. This is the imagination part that's missing. When people came to this country, okay, let me talk about New England for one second, because I know New England well. The Puritans, right? They came over here because they're like, look, God said these were the rules. The king says these aren't. The Catholic Church says these aren't. We're going to go do our own thing because we don't want to go to hell, and we're just going to organize this and figure it out. And the first couple years were pretty bad. A lot of them died. They fought Indians. The Indians fought bravely. The Native Americans, whoever you want, the Wampanoags, the Pequots, Micmacs, all the different groups that were around here, they fought. And there were wars. And just so you know, the natives weren't the little friendly guys all the time either. They were scalping. There's no good guys. There were interests, okay? They come over here, and they're like, we're going to build something different. And they built their own money, and they built their own land, and they built their own success and their prosperity, and they had town meetings where everyone got together, but no one really contradicted the church because the whole idea was we're going to listen to what God says, not what man says, and we're going to build a society. They built the most literate, one of the wealthiest societies in the world out of just a few thousand people at a time when they didn't have technology of a steam engine. They did this. Maybe because they didn't have all the technology, maybe because the answers weren't provided for them. And they said, we're getting out, come and stop us. And eventually the British did, and it took 150 years to work itself out. They got themselves free, but they partnered with Virginia, which is, D.C. today, pretty much, and that was the end of New England as you know it, and all you get left from New England are bad woke ideas that are being used by government as sanction to do things they shouldn't do, which is very sad, and it should have been done differently. But where are we in this story, okay? Where are we as Pinelanders? The state of Pineland addressed today. The state of Pineland is fractured. And it's fractured because our priorities are wrong. Our priorities should be, in my opinion, okay? Actually, let me put it in a different view. I'm not even going to say it the way I say it. I'm going to say it the way you should think of it. Your priority should be, you should put that which you value most in your life at the center of your priority list. If it isn't God, don't bet on eternity. Just telling you. After that, it should be the people you care and love about, because you need allies you can trust. Blood relationships are usually better than not. Not always, I understand that. And people who share the orientation you do with whatever's at the center of your world. If it ain't God, you know it's man, and if it's man, you're going to go looking for toys. It's going to fall apart. Then you bring those people together and you say, wait a minute, when all of our toys are taken away from us, who can I trust? And you trust your money to save you, trust your tools to save you, trust your toys to save you, you trust the system, the state, the law, the Constitution. Dead objects made of paper, wood, rock, or little flickering lights are not going to help you in a time of bad faith when people fall apart. Society has fallen apart because we've put our trust in those things. We've put our trust in the dead letter of the law and the people in funny robes who go out there and just rule it is whatever they want. And we get happy for a little while because they rule the way we like. And then we get sad when they rule a different way. We say, well, that's just the system, and we have to accept this as the price of doing business. We waste the only precious commodity we have as time, okay? In search of money, which are little idolatrous objects, if you really want to get into it. Christ even talks about it. Literally, he says, if you serve these two different masters, you either serve God or you serve money. You serve God or you can serve mammon. Mammon being the love of money, okay? That's what that is. So, we choose that. And we are not willing to organize ourselves because we're like, well, we can't do it. No, we just don't want to because it would be inconvenient. And that's what happens. Civilization ends because people were too lazy to figure out the solution when the light switch didn't work. And what will happen is they'll keep calling the power company. And if the power company says, we need all your assets to turn the lights back on, they'll be like, fine, just put Netflix back on already. That's your future. It's dismal. It's pathetic. And haven't you noticed that the progression of politics, if you really want a grand theory, is not that the people at the bottom come to the top, but that the expectations of the individual and the rights and freedoms we have and the sovereignty we have in our life gets lesser and lesser and lesser, that we're indoctrinated into helplessness, that we are deprived of the social relationships, the genuine networks that can give us strength. And look, I'm as guilty of this as anyone, because I'm sitting here bitching to you guys instead of going talking to people around here. But you know what? There's so few of us. We got to look for each other. We got to do something. And then you talk to other people, and you get one bad person in there. One person says, well, I think, my conscience tells me I should listen to the system, so I'm going to turn everyone in. There's no trust. And there's an omnipresent state. And this is where we are. This is what's coming. And I didn't even talk about AI and surveillance. We could get into that. The algorithm watching us, protecting us from ourselves. Whatever these insane programmers have come up with, and they think, well, you know what? We're just going to give superpowers to this thing. We're just going to have an autonomous tank that's going to watch each person, and it knows what's best for you. We gave it good laws. Don't worry, we programmed it right. Hey, we used to work at Microsoft. We'll do a good job. Security updates, that was us. Okay. What happens when Idiocracy meets Terminator? Welcome to Costco. I loved you.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Don't say that.
I'm in a bad mood.
I know you're in a bad mood. But don't.
So, this is where we are in the story. Now, I have lost the 5 hairs left on the top of my head trying to talk to people what's out there, and the algorithm has shunned me enough where it gets difficult for me to continue doing the talking. Just not because the stuff isn't good. This stuff is gold. But no one's going to see it, and I know that. The only people who are going to see it are the people who already agree with me because we're in a quarantine in a honeypot. And that we are content to stay in that for the most part because we don't know how to get out of it, because we have other obligations, and because the system has enough implications on us through leverage, the money we have to do, the bills we have to pay, the things we have to take care of, that we can't get out. And a lot of the people who've done the most earnest and worthwhile work, for which the Lord will, I'm sure, reward us in heaven, for those who profess belief, is meaningless with regard to the system. If anything, it's a detriment whereby those who supply, support, and submit to the system are quite beneficial. Let's see, have I ever considered that maybe the AI control system is more of a scarecrow and it's not really there, maybe it's a scare tactic? Sure, I consider it, but look, humanity, if we can do a thing, we do a thing. And if you spent any time on the internet, you see how there are different bots out there. You see the algorithms that are being used to control what things get out there. You can make the argument that there's a stupid algorithm and that the fears of it being self-teaching are overwrought at this point. It's a reasonable argument, although I think it's one that resolves itself in time. But if you spend time researching what they're doing, look at what DeepMind and the process of what that's been able to do in the predictive models, the ways in which consciousness emulates humanity. I mean, in some ways, that's what you posit's even a more terrifying scenario, because what if you have an AI that thinks it's sentient, that kind of isn't, but it's just like a bad knockoff version of intelligence? I mean, what happens when there's holes in the logic and flaws in the programming? And you could say, well, there isn't really AI, it's people doing it. Oh, okay, fine, it's people doing it, but if it's people doing it, then we have to deal with the known malice and sinful nature of humanity. So it doesn't really matter so much how it's being done. What matters is that it's being done, and it's being done because the people at the top basically want to change the nature of what it means to be human, okay? And they want to have a lot fewer people, and they want to have a lot more biological, technological augmentation. They talk about this, and we've seen this. Think about how you basically, all of you, more or less, just maybe some exceptions, but not many, carry a smartphone with you to constantly have information at your fingertips. How literally we use our hands differently today, how our eyesight has adjusted, and how our habits, our posture, from sitting, all these things that we've done, we've already integrated in an analog sort of interface version with technology. People talk about 1.0, and they're just saying, well, the digital upgrade is just a matter of us, instead of having to shut this off, we're just putting it into us. So it's just a convenience, really. And most people will probably accept that argument, They won't look at the downside of it, because we never look at the downsides. We think, ooh, cool, this is a new toy. And then 10 years later, we watch the malpractice ads go across the screen. And that's the nature of humanity. It's just like the atomic bomb explosion, same thing. They were like, it was a 2% chance it could light the atmosphere on fire. It's like, worth it! So, like, yeah, we beat the odds, and then it's like, and then you say, oh, it's only 2%. Yeah, they keep rolling the dice, How many times? If you roll a D20, eventually you're going to get a hit. And this is the world we live in. This is the reality of it. And people, we construct these terms like normalcy, sanity, regularity to give ourselves the comfort of thinking we know what's happening around us when we really don't. We like thinking that there's so many people caught up in this economic system. There's so many people who benefit. But look at the lockdowns. Let me just pick a simple example of something that happened that no one's going to dispute. The lockdowns, we all understand, wrecked the American and global economy, and all the countries did so, and they didn't even care for the slightest hit of fear. For a bad flu, everyone went running for the exits, and it could have been worse. I thought it was going to be worse. If the data was accurate, a whole bunch more people would be dead. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but that's what the data indicated, okay? And that will happen again in our lifetime, whether it's artificial or natural, because these things do happen. It's cyclical. No, don't back at the cord root. Okay, so you know that they're willing to shut things down, or even take television. Okay, let's pick media, because most of you know, what is it, like 6 companies I think own 90% of the media, right? And that you see all these programs. Actually, this was an encouraging thing. So they were making a Batgirl movie, and it was a woke movie. They invested $90 million into this movie, and they had studio audiences screen it, and they kept editing it, and people just hated it. And they hated it so bad, they announced today they're throwing out the whole movie because nobody would want to watch it. It's such an embarrassment. They would rather sink the cost altogether, what they spent to make the movie, than try to put it out there. And yet we see movies and programming and content and games that nobody wants. Nobody's buying, that's forced on us. I mean, you remember Gamergate. All Gamergate accomplished was getting Donald Trump a few extra votes. But ultimately, what happens is they're willing to suffer these costs as loss leaders because the money is fake. What's real is the perception that's put around you upon the sense of what's normalcy based upon what you see. And while people like you and me, Xers or some millennials coming up who've been gaming for years, who grew up playing, role-playing games that still had heroic stories where you go save the princess, and the princess was a girl, there was never a question about that. That you had stories, unless she was Toad, but that's different because that was Mario Bros. And she was in another castle anyway, so we don't talk about that. We just take the next mushroom and keep going on to the next castle. Honestly, I am utterly convinced Mario Brothers is an allegory for drug culture, and if you've had the various power-ups, you know what I'm talking about. What I would say, though, is that as we've seen this, what they're paying for is they're paying for the price to shape your reality, where it's just a bonus to them that you're praying for the actual goods. And like Ryan says, they can pay for the taxes, but what you're paying for, and what they realized a long time ago, and why all this effort went into media, and specifically trying to get in your eyes to get in your head, although now they do things with direct programming as well, is that what they wanted to do was get you to have a certain way of thinking. And, they realized, yes, school works to some extent, but school really just gives you a basic skill set. People don't really have a passion for that. What are kids learning from today? They're learning from playing, what's the game they play? Undertale or whatever?
Well, that was like 2006.
What's the game they play? Minecraft. No, there's another one they pay. What is that damn popular game they play that has no sense to it? That's not a swear word. Anyway, that, not Minecraft, not Undertale, what the heck is it? Not Overwatch. At any rate, this is what they're playing. Fortnite, thank you. It's Fortnite, that's what it is. So they're sitting there, and what's literally a fortnight is 20 days. It's just a waste of absolute time, but they love it. And they go in there, and it's Fantasyland, and the kids are there from the get-go, and they just play with a bunch of blocks, and life becomes being a featured character in a Lego set, just like the movies. And look, I love Legos, and Lego has had creativity, and they had all these beneficial aspects to them. But what they didn't have is the ability to develop adult relationships. What they don't have is, the one that turns kids into moronic hip wobblers. That's absolutely true. And they're moronic hip wobblers.
What's a hip wobbler?
Someone who walks funny because they're paying attention to something. They're looking at their screen like this. I'm trying to emulate, so they're wobbling. But I don't even know which game it is. Okay, it doesn't matter which game.
It doesn't matter. Can we move on,
Yeah, it doesn't matter. All of them serve the same basic purpose, which is a detachment from reality. And look, there are times we detach from reality. I'm guilty of this. I'll own it. I'm a gamer. I think that's fine. But like Ben says, as soon as the digital place is as soon as the digital idea is in place, we become the money for them. In fact, they said that they're going to just use our activity to create crypto for people who can basically use us. I mean, why not? I mean, slavery.
They're going to hook you up to VR, and you can just sit there, and your farts will generate cryptocurrency inside of your body that's hooked up to the digital-based system.
I mean,
blockchain.
It could be, yeah. I mean, I could be sitting here playing Tetris, and I'm just doing a defrag for a computer, and I'm getting paid, and whoever owns that computer that's manipulating me is giving money to some account of some person who's dominating all of this. And that's the new economy, and there'll be a few people or a few beings, maybe, existing outside the system. The rest of the people are going to be happily ensconced within it, and they're going to be living in the cloud. They'll be living like Odysseus did in the land of the Lotus Eaters, except instead of having, chemical substances by intoxication by narcotics, although that'll probably still be out there, they'll probably have it through direct nerve induction. So, we'll see it. And that is what is coming. And, but I think before it comes, because they want to eliminate the resistance, because they want to make sure the control is complete, we're going to have one really bad episode where some combination of war, famine, plague, and all that happens. I think we'll see World War III. I do. I don't know if it'll be this year. A lot of people think it could be September this year. A lot of people have suggested 2023, maybe sometime after Russia's, fully annexed the Ukraine. Back into the empire as it was. I don't know. I mean, could be at any time. Could go a little faster. Could go a little slower. I don't assume that there's a fixed schedule. I think it's more like a series of guidelines and checkpoints that get hit. And as those get accounted for, we see the transformation of our world into one that is different. What are you laughing about now?
I'm looking at who they've categorized as INTP.
Okay.
Bill Gates is an INTP. How much does it say about me knowing that I'm an INFJ? And most of the world's dictators and those of unsavory political persuasion
Prophets and dictators are INFJ.
are usually INFJs.
Sure.
But
'Cause they have the
I
empathy.
am absolutely thrilled that I'm not an INTP because I think Bill Gates is worse.
So what they got there? It looks like they got Bill Gates in that picture, Neo from the Matrix, and Albert Einstein, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I just thought that.
no,
was,
it is fun.
I thought it was amusing.
I had to.
How much is
We watched a video the other day, the dark side of INFJs, which for those of you who know MBTI parts, it's introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. So that's my wife to a T. But it's also where mad kings and queens come from. They did a side-by-side analysis of Daenerys Targaryen and Adolf Hitler, which I thought was quite compelling, actually. Although it did seem like Dany was a little bit madder than Führer was when it really came down to it.
It's
But
just
they both
because
caused a
in
lot of
like our
destruction.
effort to want to save the world, sometimes we end up destroying the very thing that we want to save.
Well, I mean, look, I understand
just
tunnel
happens.
vision. I mean, I am an INTJ. This chat is dominated by INTJs, but we have some hangers on, some
Every
INTPs,
now and then you
some
let your
INFJs.
F through just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I'm like 65-35 on the spectrum of that. But it's one of those things where one of the things that's interesting, and one of the things that distinguishes this chat, by the way, this is why Tim and some other people who don't understand why they're here are here. Those of us in this chat are living in the future, describing the pathway there from the past. Most people, I've learned over time, look at causality as some miracle, magical mystery tour. They look at people who can understand what is going to happen because they're capable of projecting their thoughts into the future, looking logical leaps ahead as evil villains because, like, how did you know that was going to happen? I didn't know. Well, I'm like, that's because I looked past my friggin' face. I looked what was going to happen. Do you ever think what happens after you do something? Well, no, I'm just living in the moment. Well, okay. You're like a little thing below, a bird blowing on the breeze, but you can't plan for the future that way. You can't have leadership on that. And like our sort of theoretical leadership does that. We elect cool, popular people. I mean, now they hire modeling agencies to find people, because you have to be a certain look. And you bring those people in there and be like, oh, people would find this person acceptable to make them feel good. I mean, our politicians are grief counselors at this point. For the Republicans, you get grief counselors. We're going to bring back the good old days when we could feel good about America. And Democrats were like, we're going to bring back the people's revolution and we're going to do this. And all of them get their paychecks from the same people who are robbing all of us blind. That's Washington for you. And then they send people with guns to talk to people like, you're a threat because you're going to make people have cognitive dissonance. Well, maybe you need some cognitive dissonance. Maybe you need to be shaken up. Maybe you need to look at things differently. And those of us who see things differently, maybe we need to stop pretending we care what others think. Because you know what? It's not that useful to us.
What was it that you asked me yesterday? It was
I
some
don't
sort of
remember.
psychoanalysis question that kind of stemmed off of our MBTI conversation. And you asked me to describe you. You're like, well, who am I? And I went back to the old classic that you are a Cardassian who wishes that they were a Romulan, but whose mother had a one-night stand with a Ferengi. That's you.
That's me.
That's you, bro.
That's me. That's terrible. That's terribly and oddly specific. It's painful.
And if I see 17 of y'all and watching now, there better be 17 thumbs up.
Yeah, like, subscribe, do
Please.
what you got to do. Yeah, and share.
Yeah.
By the way, we need more people.
We need
We beat the algorithm.
And I don't know. I need to do more too. I don't know what to do. I bang my head at the wall because
Well,
I'm
you know,
just
the
like,
sad thing is, like, all the people that I would have encouraged you to reach out to in the past, as far as alt media, they're all on the sovereign list. So why bother?
So let's talk about that for 1 second. I want to say this very gently because the algorithm won't like it. There's a site called OCULUMLABS that is talking about supposedly having discovered a credit score system that's going to be put into place. Not saying you should believe them, not saying you shouldn't, but they talk about the idea that a lot of people are gatekeepers whose job is to keep the conversation going certain places and not other places. And that there are other people, like Julian Assange is one example, James O'Keefe was another, there are other ones out there, not as many as you'd hope, Steve Quayle was one, who are trying to actually just understand and share a story about what's happening. But there's, basically anyone who's an acceptable alt media personality, and it won't surprise you, most of these names, as well as a lot of people in the Christian community, because the overlaps between Christian nationalism they'd like to attack and the alt-right are a lot more than you think. There are people who understand the civilization is in crisis because it lacks a moral core, because it hates its people, it hates its identities, and it hates its core ideas, and that's deliberately been pushed. Nonetheless, what's happening is that it seems like, and this might be part of the story, to get the system to transfer over, what you basically need is, and this is how you have to think of it, we think of the world as it's Democrats fighting versus Republicans in a 50-50 showdown, whereas instead you could think of it, it's 390 million people against 435 people who are acting against our interests, who realize they can all have a good happy ending if they agree to work with one another and screw the rest of us. And if you really begin to think that way, I mean, Lord knows I sound like a Marxist in this, but class relationships do matter, actually, in the sense that there is not an investment from the people at the top to the people in the bottom. There never has been, there never will be. There might be the theoretical idea that, you know, we want to look out for the betterment of all mankind, but honestly, look how people behave these days. Look what's out there in the media. Look how rotten we behave to one another. And ask if you, when you look at that, when you look at how people treat one another, not how you deal with person to person, like take my buddy Tim here, goes homeless shelters, helps people, then you might actually like people because you connect them. But if all you see are images of people at constant conflict with one another, arguing over everything incessantly, and social media bringing out every one of our worst bathroom graffiti tendencies, how are we going to feel with other people? And do you think that the people on top are immune from that? Or do they just have the same sort of, it's like saying, thank God I'm not one of those lowly folk? And we don't offer a counter alternative. We say, well, it's just the way it has to be. And one side says, well, it's not right. We need to give more power to the state to force people to be equal. And the other side says, well, we just need to get more money so we can be apart from it and say it's not our problem. But it is our problem.
Don't be hating on the steerage class, bro.
Don't be hating on the steerage class. I like that. This is the battle we actually need to be fighting. This is the battle Christ was fighting. He said, you know, you need to get out there and argue these things, but we don't do it. We don't want to do it. It's hard. It's ugly. I don't like to do it either. I've been trying to be a really nice person this week. I mean, which is hard for me. It shouldn't be hard, but it was hard. And I on Monday, I was pretty good, and on Tuesday, I was starting to lose it, and Wednesday, I had to go deal with the public, so that kind of got away from me, and by Thursday, I'm back to being a misanthrope. I'm just, and I can't, and I'm struggling even to control my own feelings of anger and frustration, and even like I want to direct it at the world externally, at the people who don't know, why are you such ignorant fools, and like the people who I do know, I'm like, you guys could do so much more, why aren't we? And then at myself eventually, because I'm meaner to me than I am to any of you, I'll be like, why didn't I do this differently or that differently? And it's just like at some point I'm like, I'm exhausted, I can't do anything, I'm just gonna take a nap. Which I probably will, probably about 20 minutes, to be honest with you. But it's like, because you can see it. And I think we can all see it now. I mean, I think anyone who is perceptive enough, and like, what do you do to resist it? What do you do to stop it? You're like, well, we're going to have money and we're going to live in primitivism for a while. We kind of did. You know, we went 90 days without electricity. And it was fun and it was a challenge.
Was it fun?
It was fun.
No,
it was a little fun. I thought it was a little fun.
I sat up here every day and cried because it was so cold.
During the summer.
Holding chickens. Oh, no.
During the snow, the winter, that's different.
Yeah, but it got cold up here in, like, September, dude.
Dana will have it. Well, actually, women generally will have a different view because women value comfort much more, which is why they're more adherent to the system.
No, it wasn't even that. It wasn't like, oh, I need to be up in this bougie bungalow. It's like, I am so cold, I am in pain. That's what it was. Like, not like, oh, we need to
Well, I don't want to generalize overly much, but what I want to say is that I felt more alive when I was worried about providing electricity
is
by going
true.
out to take care of things than I worry about. Like, now, reality has come back in. Now I'm just worried about bills, looking at a world that sucks, where I really don't care, and I just think about that. Women value comfort, and Tom talks about taking a nap. Yeah, right?
It has
I'm
nothing-
old,
it
man.
has nothing to do with comfort. It was just, you know, we just lost our home. We had nothing here working. We haven't gotten out of survival mode.
The audience tells me I was miserable back then, so I
You
was.
were miserable back then. That was your car. That's when you had to go down by the lake and do your show in the car. Remember?
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
drive-by
People
service.
said that was some of my best stuff, though. I mean, it was raw content. I mean, I kept it going. Dana just hated freezing the breath.
What?
All right. So yes, it was cold, but to be very clear, she always had a heater. We always made sure she had a heater. I made sure to keep the generator going, so we
Pickle
weren't.
Rick, I don't think you understand. When it's like below 40 degrees, 30 degrees, one little dinky heater ain't gonna get it done. The stuff on my bedroom floor was freezing solid.
Speaking of which,
And
by the way,
being cold when you have Lyme disease, it's really painful.
our wood stove theoretically is supposed to arrive today. Actually, within the next. I can't take a nap because the guys are gonna come unload it. Damn, I guess I'm stuck awake with you guys. But anyway, where were we? Now I'm getting distracted because we got into a side. I mean, I don't, like, and Ben says chop wood. Yeah, chopping wood is good and doing activities, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm stuffing. I am too frustrated with the futility of action right now to do much more than bitch, and I know that's not very helpful. But
we have a lot of really great ideas and a lot of really great ideas how to implement them. It's just when you're working from a place of no capital, all they remain are ideas, nice dreams that you think about when you're having a bad day.
Yeah, no, the reason, I agree with Dana. The reason why, so the wood stove thing, let's talk about that for a second. The reason why the wood stove thing took so long is because I had to invest in the capital, to get it. And I did. But
it took us a year.
The problem is actually that I'm not a very selfish person. I'm perceived as a selfish person, but the truth is I'd rather do stuff like this, stuff that's useful and stuff that's interesting. I have a skill set where if I wanted to, I could probably, even though I'd be very miserable doing it, getting a job that would allow me to make six figures. I actually believe that. I'm very good at certain things in purchasing and logistics that are very difficult skill sets. And I could do them, but I don't want to do them because when the end of the world comes, I'm not going to sit before the Lord and say, hey, yeah, no, I was figuring out how to move logistics from Dubuque to Des Moines, and instead, say that I wanted to reach people. So we made the choice. You basically have two paths to freedom, okay? You have the easy path where if you get lucky and money comes upon you in some ways, and then you can say the hell with it all.
Let's see, Rev Cut. Say, he read this morning that Lyme disease is way up in rural areas. Do you think it's a sea effect? No, but it's not immune from the effects of the sea. Lyme has been endemic in this nation, spreading across the world since the 70s. And they're so similar. They overlap. They all overlap. And basically like long C and that thing, like spliced with what it's spliced with. Like it's kind of... with the decreased immune function to the point where it's like your levels are reading almost like an AIDS patient would. That's kind of what Lyme is. Lyme is bacterial AIDS.
Apparently the other one might be viral AIDS.
Yeah, there's viral AIDS and there's bacterial AIDS. I'm sure there's fungal AIDS out there, but
if you want to go to good old-fashioned, sexual behavior AIDS, we got the old monkeypox. Anyway,
yeah. I'm not worried about catching that.
Yeah, no, nor am I. So let me just give a quick shout out to Mike Chupta and all the boys over there in the Pinelander chat. I saw real fast here that we got people here.
I do believe that it is up 350%, and that could be because people are waking up to how broken our medical system is, and they're actually going to naturopaths and Lyme literate doctors who are willing to stick their neck out and do the proper testing. So, I mean, I think more people are walking around with Lyme disease than are not. And if you go to the wrong doctor, I mean, you're going to be sent down a rabbit hole that leads you in the complete opposite direction of healing. So if you suspect that you have it, if you have a tick bite, don't mess around. Find a Lyme literate naturopath. Yes, you will be paying out of pocket, so prepare yourself for that because it's going to hurt. Yes, you will be paying possibly up to $1,500 for an independent lab test to give you an accurate result, but it is worth it rather than spending your whole life wondering, how did I get this sick? Where did it go wrong? Just, yeah, that's just how it is. Oh, no.
Murray's going to join us today.
I don't want to talk about it.
Why don't you want to talk about it?
Don't you give me the Lyme?
What's the solution for Lyme?
CLR. Calcium, lime, and rest. I told her to drink that 4 years
Yeah, that would
ago.
probably be good for osteoporosis too.
She don't want to. She don't want to drink the CLR.
And that would work on the some of the mechanical implements too, because you got to keep that greased up. You know, forget WD-40. It says WD-40, 40 years old. You know, it's supposed to be. Anyway, we have very acerbic senses of humor. You know what? I would love. You know what? I've had people say to me that they would love for me to have like a Pineland event here before. So if I tried to set something up for like Labor Day-ish, like up in this area where people actually want to come up for a visit. I mean, we are really in the middle of nowhere. But if people
We can
wanted
put
to
you
come,
up in our backyard.
yeah, we could tent up there, you know, and if you're willing to bring your own, you know, mosquito killing devices, it could be fun. Because I mean, it would be good if we could actually do some things together. I mean, I guess I'm just frustrated. You know, the problem is it's what's called a Cassandra complex. It's when you can see what's going to happen and you can't do anything to stop it, and you just and I try, and I've realized all you can do is help individuals prepare and save themselves, you know, in terms of
INTJs are
that.
better than that. Better at that than INTJs.
That's probably true. I could be an INFJ. I could even act out an ENFJ or an ENTJ if I needed to, because I've done it before. It's a little exhausting, but I can't do that and be a preacher and be a husband. I could wear the one hat, but I can't wear them all at once. It's too much for me, and I can't do it. I wish I could sometimes, but I mean, at this point, if I even tried to do the sort of stuff that I imagine would be helpful, all I would end up doing is staring at four walls somewhere painted white, eating green goop in a cell somewhere for the crime of thinking too much. That's the truth of it, you know. No, I am not an F. I am not an F.
He has his moments.
Well, you know, INTJs have feelings. We just don't let them guide us. We, you know, experience them, but we try to focus on what will work versus what we wish would work. Which is why INTJs make things that work that no one listens to, and why INFJs make things that everyone listens to, which ultimately don't always work. So that's the difference.
We have good ideas and our intentions are true, but like Danny.
Yeah, you mean well.
And in the effort to save the world, sometimes we end up blowing it up, and oops, sorry.
Well, if they had listened to you, if everyone had just loved you, it would have been easier. That's the INFJ problem.
Well, no, not really, because it doesn't
for
matter.
the leaders, for the mad kings.
No, it doesn't matter if they like you or love you or not. Like, if you're honed in on a goal, and your goal is to help the world.
No, I know the INFJ doesn't care about what the people want, but what the people want is what enables the INFJ, which is kind of the point that I'm trying to make. That you need that mass of people you can send as the horde upon you to enact your will.
And how does the INFJ know what people want?
Because they have empathy. They can sense the mood of the moment. INFJ leaders rise when people feel like they've been screwed really badly.
We are advocates.
Like Germany after World War One.
Yeah, we are
or
the advocates.
like to use the example, like Danny was after all those slaves in Estepor and you know, whatever.
Yeah, but like I said, the problem in getting caught up with saving the world is sometimes you will go to every length to save the world and you might accidentally blow it up in the process. That's all I'm
Well,
saying.
that's the price of the game. You recognize that coming in. So, I mean, I don't know. I realized, like, I used to think, genuinely, and you can even read this sort of if you read my writing, you read earlier writings a little bit more, maybe in the new Albion books that comes out, that, a better system hammering at people for 40 years could chisel them into something useful. But I guess I found it relieving to realize we don't have time for that. If you want to be someone who thinks it's a long-term schedule, the stuff we're talking about is 5 years distant. Honestly, I think it's happening this winter. But then again, I usually, looking back on my own predictions, I'm usually right about the sequence of events, but a little aggressive on the timing of it, because it does take longer and there is more inertial resistance that happens. But at this point, the inertia is sort of like the sugar in the gas tank that's tearing the system down around us. And I think as people find that money buys less, panic buying will ensue. Panic being the mind killer. Soul killer. Soul killer, that's right. Gotta make sure I say this right. What would end up happening is that people will start making runs on banks at some point. That's already happening in China. We talked about it. And when that gets bad enough, which probably will be in September, in response to the rail strike, that you would expect that something bigger is needed. And if the government wants to have... See, the government's solution to this is going to be that they're going to want to have a big crisis against an enemy that's not them or the corporations, which is why they want a war. And besides, war is good for the economy. They'll say they want to have a draft. They've been talking for some time about wanting to draft women, for instance. And that might be the next big opportunity,
That would be hilarious.
What,
you
to draft
see all
women?
those pink-haired pussy-hat women out there trying to... Oh my gosh.
Well, they're militant enough. Let's send them in. They're good shock troops. They can absorb. What was it they say in boxing? They got good chin. They can absorb a couple blows. I don't know. I don't. This guy writes, "You mean I finally get a chance to die for my betters?" Yes, sir. That's absolutely it. Let me say hi to a couple people here. Rev, thank you for checking in. Let's see. Tim, of course. Ben, always good to see you. Brenda, wishing you a blessed day. Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, city living sucks. Sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. It's much better living in the country. I mean, you don't have certain conveniences, and I do miss ethnic food. I mean, it is a legitimate sales point. I make good ethnic food, but man, I'd love to have, like, it's not as good as and you can't get the ingredients. I mean, not quite the same, in any case. And plus, it's less fun.
Your lamb korma was amazing.
Oh, it was. And I've gotten better at cooking Indian food. Although, you know what I learned, apparently, about Indian food? They say that the meat is so crappy there that one of the reasons why the food is so well spiced is because they do that so you don't realize the meat is rotten. So
why you know, like, dog?
Oh, talk about the dog bacon.
Well, I can't confirm it. I can't find any source, but I saw somebody posted
Korean barbecue at its best.
I'm not kidding. So I saw somebody that posted a video explaining how bacon was made, and the narrator was like, "You first start out by filling the processing vat with dog carcasses." And I was like, "What? What?"
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, this is terrible, right? But let's just think of anatomy. The shape and body of a dog is not so different than the shape and body of a pig. So I could kind of see that, like, in terms of... I'm not endorsing it. I'm saying why they could probably get away with it.
Dude, if you want to eat your old yeller, that's on you, bro.
Well, you know what? You have to look at... So here we return to Asia. So why is it that Asians have been willing to eat anything and everything, pretty much? At least East Asians. And the answer has been because there's too many people and not enough choices. So if your choice is eat dog or eat dirt, people eat dog. I mean, you could end it like we did the, what was it called? The Taiping Rebellion, where the leader who said he was the brother of Jesus Christ had people eat grass, promising it returned to mana, and they all died from their own poisoning. Which wasn't great, but that's how it actually... This was a rebellion that, like, 8 figures of people died for in China, So Chinese traditional medicine and understanding of theology has always been a little bit
plus suspect. The fact that they just, like, confiscated a shipment of over 7,000 male body parts, special body parts, the defining male body part. They just, what? How much? 7,221... I think they confiscated.
They were buying African pudenda, likely for use in traditional Chinese medicine. Huh.
Coastal.
A little Wong goes a long way. Anyway.
Oh my.
Their culture is different, which is one of the reasons why we should be war. We should be. Man, maybe we shouldn't have gone the Japanese way. Anyway, what I'm saying to you is we should be worried. China may react very oddly and very strangely, and I woke up worried about it this morning. I won't lie. I think that there's a chance that there might be some difficulties down the line in this, and yeah, I don't know.
Hey, this guy, I know exactly what makes a man, because you learn a whole lot about anatomy of all sorts when you're in veterinary school. So guess what? If I could do a neutering on a dog, I could do it on a guy.
And now you know why my wife terrifies me. All this and German.
So
I'm sure I'm in a very narrow...
So technically I am a biologist.
So,
you all right?
somehow... Yeah, no, I'm fine. You know what? It's fine. It's my time. I've seen enough. I've done enough.
Totally fine.
Veterinary practice is just a social construct. Oh, man. Here we go. Let's see. I am still a fan of traditional Chinese medicine and definitely acupuncture. Well, you know, acupuncture works because it releases and activates the nervous system. I have seen that. I've seen it work. And there are some practices that do have value. And look, I make fun. I cook Chinese food. It's fine. I mean, not Chinese food like they cook in China, but like they have in Chinese restaurants here.
I mean, you would never know that, like, some of our favorite things to do is watch Asian comedians, because they're hilarious. They're
they don't hold anything back. I mean, the truth is white people aren't allowed to make jokes anymore, so it's just the reality of it. But like Ben says, they eat everything that moves. And look, there are interesting things, interesting patterns, interesting habits in every culture, and there are things that can be made fun of, and there are things that should be made fun of, and there are differences which we should accept and live in peace, in separation, not forcing things. You know, yeah, I mean, this guy writes he stopped from making jokes in public in 2017. I make a lot of jokes in private.
That's really sad. I still make really
inappropriate
jokes in public.
Yeah, you get away with it because you're a woman. You try being a white man, you know, it's not easy these days.
Yeah, people usually give me a pass.
Yeah, they do. Well, they because they kind of, they give you the uncomfortable laugh and smile, so... It's pretty obvious you guys love Stephen He. Oh, yeah, don't get Dana started.
Oh, I love
Next
Stephen
5 minutes
He.
of this program will go to...
Emotional damage!
I would love to make jokes that would be inappropriate and funny, and maybe if we had an event, maybe you'd get to do Tom doing stand-up, you know, it's Lord knows up here, you know, give me a little bit of libation and you'll get more than you want to know, but I don't know. So today's show... By the way, if you like the show, if you don't like the show, it doesn't matter. Support the show. CBC, Pure VM, Venmo, P.O. Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. It takes a lot of time to do this, but it's fun to hang out with you guys. I'm glad we do it. It's a blessing upon us.
And we are putting together an infographic box in the description box going forward so that people can find emails to Telegram channels, links.
And I hope you'll be interested in the new book when it comes out, too, because it's a good one. It's heavy. I'm not going to lie. It's probably the heaviest book I've written since... I think it's heavier than Come Out of Babylon. Come Out of Babylon was less personal. Surviving the Fall was more useful, probably since Laurel Revolutionary. Laurel Revolutionary was dark. That's why I didn't rush to put it into, Audible format, because at that time I still had a good person for doing the audio on that, which now... still something we're working on here, which is okay. That's fine.
We do need laughter these days.
We do, and it's a shame we're not allowed to have it, and because we're not. I mean, the thing about it is, it's actually a tension release. I genuinely, I think we both believe that.
But with us, we kind of learned that years ago when I got super, super sick, and like I don't know how much time is left on the clock. So like we joke about death, we laugh about death. We joke about things falling apart in our bodies, out of our bodies, falling off of our bodies. I mean, like, you name it, if it's macabre, we've joked about it. And you have to.
You come to peace with it.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're able to, like, get to a point in the grieving process where you can laugh at something, at first, yes, it might be a coping mechanism, but then it just becomes second nature, and
Although people won't understand you, like trying to express our dark humor, like even you guys, we're really just giving
Oh,
you the
should I tell
less,
them the
like,
Dr. Bossy story?
I was thinking about
Okay.
tell them the Dr.
You
Bossy
guys,
story.
let me tell you the story.
Alright, I'm gonna grab a bite.
Don't leave me.
I'm just gonna leave.
Where are you going?
Go right here.
Oh, you're
I'm
right there?
cracker.
Okay.
I need some salt.
So I had to go to the doctor's a handful of years ago for a cancer-y type of thing. Won't get into it any more than that. But the doctor, she's looking at me and she's like, "So where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And like totally like said dead serious. I'm like, "Oh, gee, I don't know, probably dead." And and her face fell off, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was joking."
And she was one of those upbeat sort of,
she was
like,
such
bounce
a
off the walls. Very nice lady.
super. She must have been an ENFP or something like that. Super happy, bubbly doctor, and I'm like, I don't know,
Howdy.
probably dead. And she's like, "Oh my," and then I started laughing. So it's like those things, like, yeah. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Probably dead.
and I know that's it probably sounds really sad, but after you say it the first 1,000 times and you have people feign sympathy or even express genuine sympathy, you're like, yeah, and then people get bored with it and they're like, because here's the thing, and this is the truth. Some diseases are better to have for social impact than others. If you have one of those diseases that you either die quick or have a miraculous recovery, people love those stories because they're short. They have a nice narrative arc, but the long degeneracy thing where you have to watch, we're like, where's the leper colony to send the limeys to? So and the only thing worse than how people treat limeys, to be honest, and this is the worst part of it, is how limeys treat one another.
Yes.
Because they all have rage issues. Every one of them, they come off for unpredictable reasons.
It's not our fault. What do you think happens to your brain when all your myelin?
No, it doesn't matter that it's your fault. What it means, though, is that functionally you can't talk to them when they're in rage. And when you have different people who are in rage who don't have the ability to control that rage, watching them in a group try to get together to articulate their own interest is impossible.
That would be a bloodbath.
It would be a blood, and it kind of is, actually. I've never seen a group so cannibalize each other.
Yeah, that's why I
so.
stay out of the Lyme groups. Like, at first, that was my saving grace, because I was like, okay, this is what I got going on with me, and that's the path that led me down to where I am now, because I just joined a group, started asking questions, and went and saw the right doctor right off the bat once somebody dropped Lyme.
Much like the Lyme he's dealt with, much like people who probably had HIV and never recovered,
now
much like
the
long haul COVID folks. If that's comes out being a thing, which will be, because it's immunosuppressive, right? That's the problem. And people who have autoimmune, we should stick together and work together. And if you disagree, I'll effing murder you. Yeah, that's pretty close to it. That's absolutely how it actually goes. And we've been in that room before. That is how it goes.
No, it's hard being a genius with brain damage. I'm just saying.
So, a lot of people are going to experience these autoimmune disorders, and there's going to be plenty of blame to go around. And oddly enough, one of the things that we've observed over time is people never blame the responsible parties. They never blame the people who create the diseases or the drug companies who just want to make a profit on long-term treatment. They blame other sick people.
Wait, let me tell the joke. Okay, so you guys know I broke my foot, right? Some of you know I broke my foot. I finally got to go see the orthopedist on last Friday. And he's taking a look at the other injured one with the soft tissue injury, and he's like, "That is some serious drop foot. You need an AFO brace." And I'm like, "Well, this is the kind that I want. I want one that's articulated, because my hips and part of my back is fused. So
it gives support at the knee.
So it would allow me to articulate my hip, my knee, and my ankle, and allow me to walk and not fall down." But the doctor made this comment to me, and I was just like, okay. So I said, this is the type of brace that I think would be most compatible with my body, considering what's fused and what's not. And he's like, well, yeah, that's a nice looking brace, and I'm sure the government will have to pay for that. And I looked straight at him, and I'm like, well, the government gave me this disease, so I think that they're kind of obligated to pay for a device that would help me keep on my 2 feet.
So this is why I go to Dana's doctor's appointments with her. Plus I drive, but what happens is, and it's not just Lyme.
Like the
means
government
Lyme
gave me the disease.
so
They should pay for the brace.
when the chip on your shoulder becomes an anvil, what ends up happening, it can be set off at a moment. So it's legit. It's a legitimate concern. You know, if you start studying the history of Lyme disease and how it was created, what ends up happening is, you know, they get mad, and then what happens is doctors and doctors have that ridiculous veneer of like, oh, well, have you talked to a doctor? And the problem with doctors is they can read a book and they can read a diagnosis. But a lot of doctors, if it doesn't fit their narrow definition, they're not very good at problem solving beyond a very narrow thing.
I mean, and
they can solve 5 things, you know.
And I don't think he was trying to be offensive.
He wasn't.
But it was still kind of like... But they ask questions. It's like, well, why can't you walk?
Island,
I have Lyme disease. Well, are you treating it? Can't.
We'll get there.
So he asks me all these questions that I have no answers for outside of the big giant fishbowl
Well,
that is Lyme
here's
disease.
the other thing. Let's say you do this, because every now and then, once every couple years, a doctor will piss me off enough to talk. So I'll go in there and be like, okay, so you want to talk medicine. Let's start talking about microneurology in the brain and the things that, like, oh, I don't know about that. Oh, you don't? Well, you have a lot of opinions
like,
if someone doesn't understand key elements of the problem.
Oh, when you were talking about, like, the brain's own separate immune system, I don't know who you were talking about it to, but they were like, whoa, this dude actually knows what he's talking about. Like,
but I don't have a thing. I don't have a bunch of initials
would-
because I didn't sit there working on cadavers and eating takeout food in some crappy Boston
if
hospital.
if you didn't have a problem with blood, you probably would have been a good doctor.
Yeah, I would have been like Dr. House. I would have been a misanthrope that would have solved
Oh
problems
my
and no one would
gosh!
have liked me.
Yes, that's exactly how. Well, I mean,
Because the thing is, it's like, you know, this is the INTJ thing. It's like, frankly, I don't care what your opinion is. Your opinion is not necessarily relevant in determining the truth of a situation. And I know that's a mean thing to say. And look, I've been in the public sphere. I can, you know, feign empathy. You know, it's that. I get it. You know, people want to feel like bedside manner. For instance, like, I'll give you an example. Because you guys like couple stories. When Dane and I go to the doctor, it's like an oil change. I give a direct description of what I want. I go
you've
in
been
and
to
out.
the doctor twice since I've known you.
Precisely. I go on the intervals I have to, when I absolutely have to, or if the check engine light's on. Sometimes. Unless I know what it is.
That's not even true.
Yeah, I'm worse than that. Okay, so, but if Dana goes...
He's full of crap right now, in case you're wondering.
If Dana goes to the doctor, what ends up happening, and a lot of people like this, not just women, but I think women perhaps more than men, they like to give story. They like to give context. Like the famous comedic joke is, ask a woman how much it costs to buy something. The answer should be a price. It should be a number. It should be a single word, okay? Here's the story. You know, I was looking. First, you have to develop the whole setting. I was looking for 12 days on this. I went to all these websites. I even called my friend. I didn't know where to get it, but then I looked at this site, and it wasn't any good. But I kept looking, because, you know, it has to be a success story. And I found this site. It was 40% off, and I got a coupon for another $8 off. I'm like, so how much was it?
And what part of the Ferengi does that not appeal to in you?
All I wanted to know, it was $23. That would have worked. A whole conversation could be in the same way talking about medical problems. You know, people talk about their feelings, their emotions. And look, I'm not saying you don't have the right to have feelings. Look, I could be a great psychologist.
Pickle Rick, but you do realize the reason why I do that is because your sphincter is always so tightened about financial issues.
It's true.
I want you
even
to,
when we weren't.
I
so
want
poor,
you
it's
to
true.
feel like even though I had to spend money, it was a win.
So let me ask you a
And it-
question. How would you have described that same situation before you met me?
The same exact way.
Exactly. So it had nothing to do with me, and that's the
Do you
point.
know why?
That's the point.
Because
from the mouth of
because as a woman, and you were the support of the head of the household and stuff.
You're doing it for me.
It's kind of like a student taking a paper or an art project to the teacher. It's like, honey, look, I had to get this thing, but I did it smartly. I was wise. I wasn't stupid. Look, so I got this thing that we needed. I saved us some money.
You paid money. I know someone in Shenzhen. They give you 2 for free.
You still don't want to go out in the woods to get logs to make a chicken
And look,
roost.
the shopping stories are an oral sharing of skills. And maybe it is. Maybe you're right.
It
And look,
is. I mean,
I'm a bard, okay? I write books. I tell stories. We're here entertaining you, basically. That's what we're doing. We're
and
not
you
telling
do the same exact thing. If you're looking for a product, you will go to 1,000,001 websites to find the cheapest thing, but then you just buy it. See, for me, it's an accomplishment.
I do. I find ways to get things cheap. It's ridiculous. I'm
So
very
we
good at
have
it.
to share.
I was a purchasing agent.
So
I was good at this.
it's kind of sharing an accomplishment.
Well, EM was sharing her story that she thinks it's a way of transferring skills to people by telling people what they need to know. And there's validity in that. I do think that there's something to be said for sharing your experience. And that there is a time and place, like if Dana was talking to a young woman who perhaps has bad purchasing habits, it would be entirely appropriate. Whereas at, a certain time, I might just, and I guess this is an intuitive read, right? But we're all intuitives here. Anyone with sense doesn't join Pinelanders. We would be, sometimes you need that quick, direct answer, and sometimes the narrative is valuable. But narrative is important, and narrative
I
is...
blue screen when you asked me for a quick, direct answer. I shut
Well, that's
down.
like an INFJ problem, right? You can't answer a question directly.
I'm...
You'll give all sorts of context about the answer. Like you want to know the most terrifying question for Dana in any given day? What do you want for breakfast?
Or lunch.
Or lunch.
Or dinner. Or the worst is when I'm sick to my stomach in the first thing in the morning, like, hey, I'm making dinner now. What do you want to eat? I'm like, I'm on the verge of throwing up. Please don't talk to me
So one of the
about
things
food.
I've been trying to get my wife to understand for many years is that you have to defrost certain foods for them to be available for later meals. But she doesn't like to talk about certain meals until they're about to happen. And unlike a restaurant, I don't keep fresh food available for everything because I have to, defrost things. Like many people do. I do most of the cooking here just because the Dana over the stove, the heat causes...
Well, I can't. I mean, I'd probably fall down and send a pan flying and catch the house on fire.
It's easier for me to do it. I actually like cooking. I'm not as good cook as Ben.
I like it. I'm good at it, but physically, it's just with my condition, it's not really gonna ever happen without assistance. That's just the way it is.
Let's see. EM writes, I will say that when women share stories, we walk away with new understanding of so many things beyond the actual conversation. It's different with men because that is a matter of fact, communication of facts. Yeah, it is. Well, it's like, the way women's, like for instance, the way the wardrobe section, or the clothing sections are.
Shopping is very philosophical, and at least now it is.
But when you go into
now.
a men's section, okay, everything is set up in very simple, easy to access, easy ingress, easy egress areas. Whereas, a woman's shopping area is like a jungle you're designed to get lost and explore into because it understands women are more sensual, they're more in feeling, they're more in emotion, they're more in the moment. And look, this is not a bad thing. Women are detail-oriented. My personal belief, okay, I might get in trouble for this, but my personal belief is women are detail-oriented because that's what you need to be as the primary skills that women will need, which is caring for babies, whether they be men of older age or little children, where the job is you're constantly responding to detail. You don't overthink things. Like, if a woman sat and thought every moment a child cried, why is this child crying gay? Why would this child cry? We wouldn't have a species. And that's the truth.
That is true.
That men separate themselves from that world, and we recognize that we're designed to look at long-term threats and to live in our mind and have this abstracted, idealized space where we are. This is why men, for instance, are better at things like archery, usually, because we can idealize something in motion, whereas women will notice details. Like, men are better at seeing motion. Women are better at seeing color, because what do they have to cue for? They're looking for details around them.
That's not applicable to me.
It's generally true, though. That's actually scientific fact. And it makes sense. It's not just in humans either. It tends to be true across species.
Well, you remember when I told you whenever I had my IQ test done for when I went back to school?
Okay.
The guy that did my test came back in with a stack of papers. He sat down across from me. He sat down the stack of papers. He took off his glasses. He looked at me. He's like... And he just kind of like looked at me. I don't know the look. You'll maybe give me an adjective. But he's like...
Perplexed.
Oh, don't you spit
No,
on
just
me.
water. Just water.
He
Gets in my
said-
beard.
He said, you have enough proficiency to be a fighter pilot. You have enough proficiency to be a neurosurgeon. He said, anything on this list you could pick and excel at. He's like, I don't know what career to tell you to pick.
But you know what?
And I was like,
Geniuses usually fail.
that's not helpful, though.
And I'm going to tell you why geniuses usually fail. Because A, we're not good at socializing, and B, it's hard to explain something to people who don't understand. The hardest thing that I've had to learn in my life, and I always tell Dana, the biggest mistake smart people make is that smart people think other people are smart like them. That they don't understand that people are amazed by simple acts of causality. and that it's very difficult. Like, when you read my writing, okay, I've been insulted before by people who have degrees that my writing is too simple. I write with simple words as much as I can manage. For some reason,
Let me
Jesus
put
spoke in
it in
parables.
simple words so you can understand.
People understand by metaphor. People understand by experiential relationships. People do not understand. Like, if we were trying, like, if we get, every now and then, because every now and then, I start talking to Tim, some other people, and we do shows where we talk about quantum technology, and we talk about, the existence and superimposition, and I start throwing out word salad that I know at least a couple of you are glossing over when I say it. Because you don't, and it's not an insult of your intelligence, by the way. I assume you can't enjoy this program if your IQ is not at least 120. Just because it's the way it is, because of how we talk about things here, much more so than in my writing, and that's fine, because this is for me to relax, and Dana and I to vent. This is cathartic. But they don't understand, and you try to do something genius, and you're supposed to go through hierarchy. And hierarchy, the problem with hierarchy is it's a bunch of betas defending their position, knowing that they don't really have the ability to do anything more. It's like middle management. There are usually brilliant people at the top, brilliant people at the bottom, but the midwit problem exists in corporations, it exists in schools, it exists throughout all of society. That people who are slightly above their station holding everyone back because it's the only way they can keep their own place. And that sort of hierarchy that we have is I don't know how you escape that. I mean, even if you had a talented geniuses, I mean, the problem is none of us, we like to come up with ideas, but we don't really work hard. It's the whole Greek problem that was in was it Huxley's New World. But this is a real issue, and so trying to explain it and get true to people, and because even that, it's like, because people listen to what I say. Like, I went out there, like, I talked about how culture and ethnos were related, right? And then, so basically, I get canceled. He's mean and hateful. An emotional attack that has no relevance to the way I've ever treated people, and a slur which I'm not allowed to defend because people are loud, because it's just like, well, he said this thing. The fact that I was true in everything I said, and demonstrably so, is immaterial to them.
But you are a cisgender, straight, white male. You are essentially Satan incarnate.
The funny thing, you're right, but no, but yes,
yeah, I mean,
by their view.
But yeah, in their eyes.
The funny thing about it is they need us. And what's going to be the irony in the final laugh of the West, which will be a bitter, rueful one, but it'll be that, is they're going to go to all the people, like people in this chat, and say, hey, will you help us? Where were you when I needed someone? I needed to be brought in. And you could have shown me respect. But now, afangul.
We were watching yesterday because I was trying to explain to him like what the INFJ door slam is, and it's interesting because the psychology between an INTJ door slam and an INFJ door slam, it's just like we dump out our life essence into people essentially, and we get stomped on, taken advantage of, used, all that crap. So when we've given to the point where there's nothing left to give, and we come to the realization, oh, this person is toxic and they're never going to change. Why am I putting my energy into them? That's when the door slam happens.
This is the great resignation, in short.
And it takes a long time to get to that point. With somebody in my life that I just recently door slammed, it had been over a year of me going back and forth, wrestling with it, struggling with it, grieving over it. I mean, like, I had to do it. It had to be done to protect myself. But why did they say INTJs? Oh, because you can't tolerate the stupidity of other people.
Yeah, I don't like ineptitude. Like, I don't really like leading groups. I just do it all the time because I won't follow someone who I don't think can do a better job than I do.
I mean, like,
and I know that's arrogant.
I'll give you the shirt off my back any day of the week, but when it gets to the point where you're taking advantage of me, like, and I can see that clearly, that's when I pull back.
Dana has a harder time breaking relationships than I do, though.
I even have an even harder time letting people in because I've been screwed so many times. Because I let people in my heart. I dump a lot of compassion and kindness on them, and I always end up getting screwed. So for me, it's just better not to have any
my
friends.
Job is to prevent Dana from interacting with people outside of a structured environment, because I know her feelings will lead her into trouble, where she's not really naive, but it kind of manifests the same way in this sense, that she trusts the wrong person.
It's not naivete. It's
It's foolish optimism.
No, it's that
Sentimental?
it's that little flicker of hope that you have inside of you that says, maybe this person won't disappoint me. Maybe this person actually is a decent human being. Maybe if I show a little bit of love and compassion to this person, they won't stab me in the back, somewhere down the road. Like, just maybe this person is a decent human being. That's what it is. It's this type of, it's a weird, misplaced hope. It gets us into trouble, INFJs especially, because we want to see the good in people. Why else would we try to save the world and epically fail every single time we try to do so?
Well, don't worry. I have the perfect plan for Utopia that no one will ever listen to.
Just let me save you. Hit the red button, the reset button.
So our ending story, just so you know, ends up being that we end up being there with the repent for the end is nigh sign. But yeah, this is what happens to Dana when she tries to do these things in a single sound. That's how that actually goes. All copyrights to Price is Right. That's pretty much how it goes.
You gave me the Price is Right fail horn.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Oh my god!
But like for me, and this is what happened. I mean, I don't know how many of you. I mean, I'm sure a couple of you. A lot of us have gone into complete seclusion and become reclusive hermits. Not because we necessarily want to be. Yeah. I would love to have meaningful, important, helpful interactions, and there's at least a half dozen of you in here who I would be able to have that with that I know of, and I'd like to believe even more than that. Some of you I just don't know as well. No insult intended. That maybe we could hang out, and even though we are very idiosyncratic, like I have noticed, I've met a few of you, and I don't exclude myself from this. We have weird social tics. It's not my job to tell them, but
we're all really weird.
Yeah, you can tell we're not used to having conversations with voices outside our head. Schizophrenics unite. Maybe we just need to get the government to recognize us as a group, that they'll fund us and give us a reservation. Where's my leper colony? That's what I want.
I ain't signing up for no government program. They're gonna lock you in a room and make you remote view.
No, well, maybe it would be like one of those happy artist colonies. They can give us something up on the top, not the Hudson River, put it on the Allagash River up here in Maine. Those were much nicer than the insane
because that's just the way I want to go out.
Some of those paintings were interesting.
I want to go out a cure for wellness way.
Magic Mountain got a Nobel Prize. That would,
Nah.
Was it Thomas Mann?
Nah. I'm cool.
Well, anyway, so instead we sit here and, but that's the thing. We get picked off one by one because we're not really good at connecting to one another.
You know what, Schwartz? We were at a thrift store the other day. Tom found an autism t-shirt, and I'm like, I want that so bad!
Didn't you get it? I think you did. Give me
no, I didn't. Sorry. No, I didn't get it. Because I wanted it to be kind of like big and chunky and like husband-sized t-shirt. And yes, it would have fit me, but like I said, I'm more about comfort at this point. Don't go look through the box. Stop it. I didn't buy it. He's looking through a box for something that doesn't exist. We do not have it.
I gotta tell you, I love that thrift store. The stuff, there's a lot of junk there, but they have a deal where for $35 you can get everything you can fit in the cart. And I like that deal because then you end up buying things that you might not otherwise buy. You get to try projects, And projects are always fun. Although our house, Lord knows, we're starting to look like one of those hoarder groups just because we're not really as good at organization as we need to be.
The one thing that really kind of upset me
some progress
was you took me back to the book section.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to say it. It was a Catholic Charities thrift store. And I go back there, and I'm sitting in my wheelchair. And I am like eye level with a whole bunch of witchcraft books. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I'm starting to grab them. I'm like, I'm just going to throw these in the dumpster. I'm buying these to throw them away.
She absolutely did.
Because I don't want someone who's innocent and naive grabbing one of those books off the shelves and thinking it's okay and then end up going up to hell for it. It's like, you're a Catholic Charities. Like, why are you selling witchcraft books? Why? Do you even look at the crap that people bring in and donate?
Well, I can answer that question, and the answer is no. They just put it on the shelf if it ain't broken, and they move it along. And that's the problem. I mean, no one exercises, what would you say? the word that pops in my head is discrimination, but that's discernment. That's the word I want. The discernment about what they keep and what they don't. But you can find some other good stuff there.
And you're like, oh wait, here's more. And he like reaches to the shelf above me, hands me a tarot deck. I'm like, are you kidding me?
yeah, so she.
you said you wanted to do something.
Yeah,
with
no,
them.
we might do a good old fashioned book burning.
Are we gonna burn them?
Yeah. Do you want?
You
Well, let me
guys-
ask you a question. If we did a Pineland book burning of occultic materials, would you want to participate?
You guys want to
Heck,
see
if you
us-
even
you wanna-
wanted, you could send us a couple things. I'll throw
Yes.
it in a fire for you. We
Yes.
got a little pit we could use, or a little on the side there.
If you have a book that you no longer want that is not serving Christ, you can send it to us and we will set it
Or
on
even if you
fire
have
for
a book
you.
that has no redeeming values to it, there are plenty of books that could be going into that. I mean, sometimes it's cathartic and it's useful to get rid of the trash that isn't helpful. And people say, "Oh, this is terrible. They're reenacting the Third Reich." Look, there's stuff that's trash. Sometimes things needed to be burned, and sometimes this idea you can fix everything and you can rehabilitate everything. Look, you can separate yourself from certain things, but you can't fix everything. And trying to do that, how many good things have we destroyed trying to help things which couldn't be helped? And that's the reality of it, And I do hope, and I'm not against rehabilitation for a lot of things. I'm actually quite generous in that because imprisonment doesn't really work very well for a lot of problems. Unless prison's just a place you throw people whose violent tendencies can't be controlled. That's all it is. But I have a copy of the 9/11 Commission. Well, I tell you what, we will do something. If we have, maybe I'll try to put an event together and having a real event. We could have that be a feature part of it. We'll have what do you call it? Books and dogs. Make some hot dogs or something on one hand, and we'll burn one on the fire and burn the other on the fire too. One will be trash. Different fires. Okay.
That's not a very catchy title.
I know. I'm
Books
not.
and dogs.
I might have a headache and I'm tired. I don't have an answer.
Books and dogs.
Let's see. I think tribal affiliations will be the future, and I think it's going to become regional more than anything else. That's true. And hopefully you don't get stuck in your region. I know where you're at. With stupidity as kindness, I always cringe when people get caught up in helping a really dumb person do something they both suck at it. You know what? We have, honestly, it's one of the reasons we've had problems here is we've gone out of our way to help people we probably shouldn't have. And I don't want to say I regret it, because, on the one hand, I'm trying really hard to follow the Christian path of being kind to people and being generous, but...
But at what point do you say, like, okay, these are my boundaries, if you cross them?
You know why we keep crossing them? Because we don't have our own clan, because we haven't ever figured out how to put it together, because everyone's too busy chasing dollars to make any sense. That's the truth. That's the 100% truth. Ourselves included.
Well, you could go meet the chicken people in town.
Yes, but the answer, I'm sure the chicken people are lovely, but the answer is not to go desperately seek amongst people for the 1 in 10 you find. When you have a community of people, my job is just to make you feel so bad that you move up here. Or I move somewhere else. That's my job. I'm going to land the guilt. I'm going to use that Ferengi guilt
But if
thing.
we were to, like, rate our community preparedness as far as, like, who we know in the community and blah, 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 it would be very, very low. We know one very big important guy that has had, like, many fingers and many pies in this town.
But the relationships are generational.
But everybody else, like, I mean, the post office lady. I mean, everybody knows the post office lady.
In a New England town, you have to know the dump guy and the post office
But all
lady.
the dump guys are French, and they just do their job without talking to you. So that's something that we should have worked on. But when you're in survival mode, you can't.
It's
you're not
just
really
that,
going
too.
out there.
I mean,
to make
I'll be
friends.
really blunt, like, because a lot of these things are good suggestions, but frankly, I don't like talking to people at this point. So, but by the way, for all you people who like to write hit pieces about me from time to time, let me save you some ink. I'm too damn tired and I'm too damn old to go out there and serve as a punching bag for you. So
And we
go
really don't-
find
and we
someone
really don't
else to
care
go
at
bother.
this
You know
point.
what? If you want to get, I hope you get the results of the policies you want. That's how I actually feel. And when you do, just remember I told you that with a smile on my face.
Yeah, right now we are living in the biggest "I told you so" ever.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's exhausting. But in the end, I mean, and who knows? Maybe this is the end of all things. A lot of people don't want to believe that because they think, oh, the technology's far away. But I don't think it's not. I don't think it's that far away. I really don't. Let's see. Over the years, I have just realized that most people close off their minds at about age 20. Like, I don't think my minds are closed. I just don't think most people are very compelling. I mean, I'm not really into the forced structure of conversation. I'm not into the pretending that certain things are interesting. Like on this chat, I talk about things that are interesting to me. If they're not interesting to me, I don't talk about it. I don't pretend it's balanced. I don't pretend that we're going to cover every side. I don't, and none of that. Or even, even Dana will say, I mean, it's not the best thing, but like if she brings up something that I just can't connect to, I don't. Or conversely, sometimes she'll say something, or that I can't. It's just one of those things. Or I'll say something she can't. She's like, well, that's nice, great, but who cares? And even with interesting things, sure. I mean, it's
I think that's a result of our personality traits, though. INFJs and
maybe.
INTJs
Well,
are
yeah,
very
I'm
much
sure
like
our
that.
life experience probably hasn't degraded that at all. But like people, the niceties, and like the thing that frustrates me most in talking to people is the normalcy. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm worried my kid's gonna be going to school. They're gonna graduate in
It's
6 years."
like, why
I'm like,
your
6 years, man. You're an optimist, aren't you?
It's like, your kid is still going to public schools. Your child is a
And you know what? I feel
failure.
bad because look, if you have kids, and we don't, but if you do, I mean, obviously you're much more invested in the perpetuity of things in a certain way, in a certain sense, and you want to believe the best of the world. Like I had friends, I had a good friend actually who I knew for many years. Went to his wedding, was very involved with his life, and he ended up having some kids who had some special needs. It's a lovely family, very nice people, but his belief structure evolved in the way that was needed for the long term perpetuity of them in the structure they have that he values to exist, and not the external reality of events. And I realized that that cocooning effect is something that is one of the most powerful reasons why people during COVID for example, complied with it, because they, that whole thing we laughed at getting back to the new normal, that meant something to a lot of people because they were losing their minds and they couldn't exist in that world. I mean, look at all these stories that are
What's
out
that
there
say
of
about us
kids,
that
and
we didn't lose our minds?
it means that when you're crazy, you can't break something already broken.
That's true.
It's
Word.
actually, because what, we've been in a war of the society against the people, if you want to think of it that way, and it's often been the case in history that some of the best and most effective soldiers were the clinically insane, because war is madness. It's the breakdown of rules. It's the breakdown of order, and so people like us who've already either because of personality tendencies, or for a lot of people, what I find happens is at some point you find you are on a need on one side and the system won't permit it to you, not because it couldn't have you, but because it's bad form. And you start to see what the problem is. And when you start to understand that this is that you are, it's like when I got fired from Jackman. It's like, oh, it's nothing personal. It's like, you didn't think you're wrong per se. And of course they'll pretend to them, yes, but like, be like, we couldn't have dealt with that publicity. It's like, okay, so let's just throw someone on the altar to burn the witch at the stake. And that's the way it always is with heretics. That's why telling truth is thankless. And if you want to know why really smart people who end
the
up being
funny
really
thing
rich
is,
people
like,
support really evil systems, it's because they've been screwed so many times. They say, the hell with it, let them burn, and I'm
but
just
they
going to
were
get my
all
share.
just cowards because they echoed and shared the very sentiments that you spoke about.
Sure.
And when it came time for the spotlight to be shown on them, they just tucked tail and yellow bellied their way out of it.
And this is what you find. People's basic perspective is, I suffered, and so you should too. And so other people, if they can avoid suffering and just throw someone as a sacrificial lamb, they do it. And this is the remarkable thing. Actually, this is why I spend my time in theology, because Christ, uniquely amongst figures in history, spoke truth, even though, and his disciples, apostles, whatnot, have spoken truth, even though there's been no benefit. Basically, they've gotten martyred, mocked, slaughtered, humiliated, but they speak truth and they keep going, and they don't care, and because they found something bigger and greater, and they found it in their mind's eye and their heart. They found the pearl of wisdom for which they were willing to throw everything else away. And that's kind of how I perceive my home life, that I don't care about the fact that, I mean, I would rather be poor and faithful than wealthy and having to adhere to another system, and even to the point where it's self-defeating for our ability to survive to some extent. But these are the sort of things that you realize in life, because you realize time is short, and you think about the person you become. And it's like when you're in the process of succeeding at something, like, because I worked in somewhat important jobs, you get such tunnel vision that you lose sight of everything happening around you, and you don't see the transformation that even day by day, it's massive, the amount of changes that are happening around us. And people should see that.
But wouldn't you agree that when you are
Can't break a
forced,
knee.
when you are forced to live by faith, oh crap, I just lost my train of thought. when you're comfortable, when you're comfortable in the world, job, kids, routine, blah blah blah, like you don't have time for anything else outside of your daily routine.
Sure.
But when you don't know whether or not you're gonna maybe freeze to death that night, I mean, that's living on faith.
Yeah, well,
or when you don't know, like, how you're going to pay this bill, or, like, how you're going to fix the tire that just blew out in your car, like, or just simple...
And people are going to learn that. People who've never had to know that before, and they're going to panic, and they're going to submit.
If you're not already living in faith, practicing it now would be a good start, because you will eventually have to live on faith.
To build on what Dana is saying, it's very hard to live on faith if you've never known need. Faith is one of those things that you cultivate. You know, they talk about this. Actually, ancient cultures, in their rites of passage, often would put people into situations where survival was not guaranteed. You know, think of the infamous Indian bravery tests and whatnot. And the reason why is because when you put people in positions where their survival isn't guaranteed, there are forms of awareness. There is a mental leap that happens. And faith is that way.
Sometimes you have to poke the reptile brain just a little bit.
Yeah.
To get,
and you know,
get certain instincts to kick in.
And I think a lot of people are, but the problem is the first instinct of the rat brain that hangs out down there with it is fear and to hide and to just take the deal that's given them. And I think that's what's going to happen. Talk for 1 second. I want to make sure that the guy with the stove isn't here.
Oh, is that our stove?
No, that's Asplund, the tree expert. That's the name of the company.
The tree expert.
Yeah, he's out there, you know, mowing something. So my stove isn't here yet. I don't even want to tell you the problems I've had getting this stove.
Oh my gosh, it has been such a nightmare.
It's just like, but I'm grateful that the war didn't start, because, you know, I always sit here any given day. I can tell you why things aren't going to work out. But we've had a fun show here. We're coming up almost on the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to bring this to a close, because YouTube does funny things if you go over 2 hours. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed the program. If you have, you want to support, if you want me to do this more often, because, I mean, look, I know you guys have to work or have to sit there. You support us, you figure out a way to make it work. Hey, I'll keep showing up. You get to hear Dana's commentary. I'll give you something to laugh at, a little couples chat, some Christian encouragement, real analysis of what's happening in the world, and just funny stories. And try to do some more lighthearted stuff. I've been doing a lot of heavy stuff lately. Maybe a little bit of lightness is called for. Anything you want to add here before I say the prayer?
Anything do I want to add?
Can you need a minute?
All
right. I'll say the prayer. Dana doesn't do well on the spot. Heavenly Father, we pray that everyone learns patience and the ability to answer more questions. Heavenly Father, I just pray for the safety and well-being of everyone who's in this chat, for those who have found their way to Christ, to come to Him and understand that living in faith means seeing things which are not seen. We're very good at seeing what's in front of us. I hope that today maybe we have learned to look past the things that are obvious, think upon the larger things, and understand whatever this world has to offer. It's basically a glide path towards compost. So seek something higher. Seek the Lord. Seek a chance to survive this, and don't let what this world is turn you into something you don't want to be. God bless every one of you, and in Jesus' mighty name, I just pray for health, safety, and wellness for each and every one of you.
All right.
What will you guys say?
So, I am exposing myself to a...
Oh, you go in there.
A theory pertaining to the shape of the planets and the firmament and the heavens. And for years, I've just been like, yeah, right, no. But I've seen, like, too many holographic things in the skies and things I can't explain, so I'm going to walk back my cognitive dissonance. I'm going to open my mind, and I'm going to educate myself on this topic. And I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be interesting. But basically, at the end of the day, I don't really care what shape it is. God made it. So if it's a donut, if it's a disc, if it's a ball, I do not care. The Lord made it so. That is mine.
So Dana will be our correspondent to offer the pros and cons of flat Earth theory.
But I am like, I'm just like, he's trying to converse with me about it this morning. I'm like, dude, I haven't even begun,
well, that's why we talked about Antarctica.
Any, like, in-depth research. Like, I am like a baby noob. I'm like not even a flat earther yet, but I'm like, I'm new with this. Like, come back to me in a couple months when I have some knowledge after sucking up some, good fun knowledge and like a sponge. And
Rooster says, just start studying the moon. You'll see it yourself. Well, you know, the thing is, the moon oddly enough, does not rotate.
well, you know
the
what?
way
Like,
we always
I've
see it
seen the
sideways.
moon upside down. I've seen it sideways, and I've seen them blocking out Nibiru. I've seen them projecting things in the sky. I've seen the artificial sun. It's just like, okay, maybe these crazy
weeks to
flat
flatten
Earth
the curve.
people, there might be, maybe they got it right, and it's really interesting to go back through the scripture and be like, hey,
The UN flag thing, that's
talks
weird.
about being set up on 4 pillars. They liken the earth to being God's footstool. Oh, one of the turtles just fell over. Carbon unit in distress. SOS. SOS. They're okay?
There's so many pets.
Are they okay?
Yeah, they're fine.
Who was it?
Sorry.
But yeah, I'm willingly digging down this rabbit hole because what I see with my eyes, I can't trust anymore. And I think that I don't.
And
need
you
to
know
say
what?
anything.
Look, I approve of the idea of questioning your assumptions. You know what? Even if you think it's crazy. You know,
I mean,
that's the thing.
like I said, I'm genuinely curious. I am 100% open-minded. Like all I asked, but like in the group that are done, I'm like, I'm a noob. Please be nice to me. I may ask some.
Yeah, Dana cannot handle when people.
I'm like,
are mean
I
to
may
us. It's
ask
just
some
bad.
really stupid questions, but I mean, everyone was so nice. And so
40 seconds.
I'm just learning.
Okay, well,
eventually I
so
will
there you go.
digest
There's
it.
Dana's confession, and I will be inevitably, drawing my own conclusions alongside her, so we'll share that. So, yeah, we'll have some more fun shows, and my own contribution to that, I'm going to take another look at Antarctica once I finish writing this book, probably about 8 days out. So otherwise, God bless each and every one of you. From our family to yours, thank you. We're happy to see you Pinelanders. Hopefully, you guys will be in touch with us, and we will be back again soon to enjoy working with one another. All right, you guys have a good day.
Be a good
Love you all.
compliant citizen.